Welcome to episode number 2 of the Benjamin Theodore podcast. My name is Benjamin Theodore, but you can call me Ben. That's all right too. In the previous episode, we've talked about my song Always Wanna Love You, which is my most poppiest song ever, which I co-wrote with Siert. And in this episode, we'll talk about a song that I wrote in 2020. Just before all the COVID stuff happened, when I just came back from a solo trip to Los Angeles. So I'll talk to you about how I wrote this song in my dreams, which is actually true. I'll play a little bit of the song. We'll talk about the songwriting, about a key change that is happening in the song, which I think is interesting. In the solo part, and how I modulate from certain keys back to the original key. So we'll talk all about that. And we'll talk about music. Welcome. It's so good to have you. If you haven't already, this is the second episode. So if you haven't checked out the first episode, there's you can find that on wherever you are watching or listening right now. And there's also a third episode that I'm already releasing, so you have some stuff to digest. And this podcast is brought to you by my brand new Patreon page. I created a Patreon page, sort of a Dutch equivalent of Patreon, that enables you to support me, to support my music. So if you like this podcast, if you like the music I make, you could become my patron and support me with a amount of your choosing. And that enables me to spend more time and resources creating this music, which I think is my life's work, is what I'm here to do, is what I enjoy the most, is what I love to do. And which I'm sharing with you, with the world. And it also grants you some benefits, like access to what I call the Vault, which contains unreleased tracks and demos that nobody's ever heard before. So you get access to that, but also you get to hear music before it's released. So if I'm creating something new, or if there's a first mix that isn't released on Spotify yet, I will release it on my Patreon page in my exclusive group that you get access to. So you get to hear that, you get to give feedback, stuff like that, which is very nice. There's also an upper tier, which it gives you access to a custom song that I will write for you specifically. So there's a lot of fun stuff. So go check that out if you like this podcast, if you like my music. Support me on my Patreon page there. Thank you very much. So let's dive into this episode. We'll talk about the track Going Back to California. Well, as you can tell, it's about going back to California. It's quite specific. There's it's not that metaphoric. There are some metaphors, of course, in this song. But why don't we just play it before I tell you anything about it? And then I'll tell you the backstory, all right? So if you're watching on YouTube, you can watch my Logic Pro session here. And I can show you some stuff. If you are listening, just close your eyes and enjoy.
When it's dark and cold and I am told that I can't make it work, when the fire in my heart is out and nothing's left to burn, there's a hideaway, a getaway, it's calling me by name. It's a place where I can settle down, where I can start again. Every winter's night I'm staring out into the starry sky, and I'm wondering what it would be like if I'd be there again. If I could fly away right now, I'd say without a doubt, I don't know when I'll be back again. My soul is crying out. that's where I'm gonna be.
There's no guitar solo there. Where is it? Ah, there it is.
I'm going back to California.
Let's play that again. There was supposed to be a guitar solo there, but it was muted somehow.
About who I'm gonna be. So that's where I'm gonna be.
There it is.
I'm going back to California. That's where I need to be. I'm going back to where I wonder about who I'm gonna be. So that's where I'm gonna be. I'm going back to California. That's where I need to be. I'm going back to where I wonder about who I'm gonna be. So that's where I'm gonna be. California's where I'll be.
Okay, so that's going back to California. There was a guitar solo missing, it was muted, and it's been a while since I've opened this session, so there was some reverb stuff missing, but you get the picture. If you would like to listen to the entire track on Spotify or Apple Music, it's there. It's also part of my Brighter Day EP, which I released in 2021. But let's talk about the story behind this song, because it's quite an interesting one. Okay, so let's go back a little bit. The year was 2019. Me and my wife were living in a sort of apartment, a flat in the Netherlands, in the city where my wife grew up, and we just had a simple life, not a lot of stuff going on, living in a small apartment, and everything was fine. But we decided to go to Italy, to Tuscany to be specific, for 2 months. And we wanted to explore Italian life, living there for a bit, living there, of being there longer than when you go on vacation. So normally we would be there for like 2 weeks, or a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, but we decided to be there for 2 months, and we had an amazing time. We were living there in the hills, on the countryside of Tuscany, on a vineyard, on a place called Le Reniere, which is amazing. The people there are lovely, and we've been back 2 times since then. But that was the first time I got a taste of, living outside of the Netherlands. And you might know that we've recently moved to Portugal, kind of part-time, so it definitely stuck with me, living outside of the Netherlands. I'm not a huge, how do I say this carefully? I like, let's say it positively, I like being outside of the country and enjoying, more nature, living a slower life, like here in Portugal. And we were experiencing that in Italy as well. So, long story short, after 2 months, we came back to the Netherlands, and we were in this phase in our lives. I was 29, so I wasn't even 30 yet, where we wanted to explore new stuff. So when we were in Tuscany, we got an offer to live in somebody's place in Amsterdam for 3 months. So it was the total opposite of what we were experiencing in Tuscany. So, long story short, again, when we came back from Tuscany, we got home to our place in the Netherlands. We canceled our lease. We moved to Amsterdam for 3 months, and it was the most stressful period of my life. Since then, I experienced some stressful times as well, which I'm not going into right now, but it was an incredibly stressful time. We wanted to try living in the big city, and conclusion was we're just not built for that. It was incredibly hectic. We were there in winter, which if you've ever been in Amsterdam in winter, it's not always the prettiest. There's lots of rain. You have to cycle everywhere. I was used to, having access to a car and going to the forest, to the woods every day with my dog and going along walks. We were living close to nature, and so now we were in the city. So I'm glad we got to experience that, because it taught us that we were not city people. That's the conclusion. So when I was there, I desperately needed to get away from it, and I remember I was so depressed and stressed about all kinds of stuff. I was running a music school at that time, and I was trying to branch out to Amsterdam, but it was difficult, and it was really stressful. Our rent was very high all of a sudden, and so we took a big risk, and it was stressful. So I needed to get away, and my lifelong dream up until that point was to go to America, go to the States, go to California to be specific. And I've never been there up until that point. And now I'm 33. I'm turning 34 in a couple of months. And looking back, I'm amazed by the fact that I didn't travel more in my 20s. For some reason, it took. I don't get me wrong. I visited some overseas countries like South Africa a couple of times, and I visited a lot of places in Europe, but I never really traveled that much internationally outside of Europe in my 20s. So, but it still was my dream to go abroad, to go to America. And so I booked a flight to go there when I was in Amsterdam, to go there on my own. And this was a big deal for me. For you, it might sound a little bit crazy if you've done a lot of solo traveling, but up until that point, I've never did any solo traveling, and I was always talking about traveling, so it's crazy that I've never done that before that time. Now I take frequent trips on my own. I have a family now, I have a son, I have another kid on the way, but I still try to get away at least once, twice a year for a short week or a week if I can, because I think it's really important to get away on your own, to sort of go back to being on your own, experiencing that. So I flew to LA to Venice Beach. I was staying there in a hostel for the first time in my life, and I had the best time ever. I went to the NAMM show. It's for, if you're a musician, you probably know what the NAMM show is. And I planned on going back there every year, but since then we had a couple of COVID years, and since then I became a dad, and it just wasn't possible for me to go there during NAMM time. But I went to NAMM, and actually, funny story, on my way back to the airport, there was this Uber driver was talking about, there's this crazy virus in China, and airports are closed there. And I was like, yeah, whatever. It's probably not a big deal, you know. I've never worried much about that. And a few weeks later, uh, you know, all hell broke loose, and you couldn't travel anywhere. So I'm really glad I got to experience that. But you know, this trip had a big impact on me. And I know Venice Beach is not the nicest place, especially, you know, during the COVID days. There was a lot of homelessness, lots of violence and stuff like that. But for me, you know, waking up at 6 a.m. because of jet lag and going outside on the beach, running on the beach barefoot, you know, watching the sun rise. I remember the orange purple sky. For me, that was really special, and that had a huge impact on my soul. And it was the first time I was away from home on my own for that long and that far. I was so far away. And if you've ever experienced that, you know what I'm talking about. But it was like a super special experience. I don't really know how to describe it other than that, but it left a mark on me, and it's sort of unlocked stuff in my heart and in my soul that I didn't know were there. And I vowed to come back every year, and I haven't been back since. So there you go. But you know, it had a huge impact on me. And when I came back, the nights I came back, I was sleeping, and in my dreams, I wrote this song, or at least, you know, a big part of it. And that's, oh man, I haven't experienced that since that night, since that moment. And now I'm a little bit more, you know, aware of spirituality and stuff like that. And I really believe that was my higher consciousness that was active in my dreams, and that was processing the trip, but also, you know, communicating that experience through music, through awareness. And and that since then I came to realize that my higher consciousness is what writes the best music. And 99 out of 100 times when you listen to my music, that doesn't come from a rational place. Let's say it comes from a spiritual place, that comes from my higher consciousness. You know, it's like an outer body experience when I'm really in the zone, and when I'm writing and recording music, and that's when the best stuff happens. And this time it happened in my dreams. So as soon as I woke up, I was hearing, I'm going back to California, that's where I'm gonna be. I'm going back to where I wondered about who I'm gonna be. So that's where I'm gonna be. And I was, you know, hearing it, da, 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 that kind of melody in my head. And also the drum part, which, if you are a drummer, you have 3 seconds to guess which drum part that is inspired on, or basically just copying which drum part. 1, 2, 3. It's 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, played by Steve Gadd on the Paul Simon records. That's basically just that drum part. It's one of my favorite drum parts ever, and since then I've put that in tons of other songs. That's the drum part. And you know, I was hearing it, so I woke up, I opened my laptop, and I recorded it straight away. And you know, it was such a special moment. And later I saw an interview with Paul McCartney where he was talking about Hey Jude, how he wrote Hey Jude, and he explained that Mother Mary came to him. That's what he is singing about in that song, and that she told him about that song. So that's also a really interesting story. But I have had a similar story. I dreamed about this song. Super special. So yeah, that's going back to California. Now let's dive into the production a little bit. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can follow along in my Logic Pro, which is my software that I'm using for the non-technical listeners or viewers out there. So it all started with this drum loop, which is also kind of funny. Let me find it for you real quick. Oh yeah, it's this drum loop right here. And that drum loop is kind of inspired by a funny song which is called Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye. Let me know in the comments or leave a review if you heard that. It's I think it's almost the same tempo. Sexual Healing. That song. Especially the wood block and then the clap with the verb. And that drum loop, since then, I've put that in 2 other songs of mine. One of them is already released, and another one is on my album, The Eternal Optimist, which isn't released yet. So I won't tell you which song that is, but it's on When I'm With You as well. When I'm with you, nothing else matters. That song, you can check that out on Spotify. But it has the same exact drum loop. I just copied and pasted it. And I love it. It's amazing. And there's this piano part. Beautiful. And it's being doubled by this electric guitar. There's an acoustic guitar. It's actually this guitar. And I recorded this in Amsterdam with minimal equipment, similarly as what I have available here. Yeah, so where's the vocal? Let me scroll down. Oh yeah, here's the vocal.
When it's dark and cold and I am told that I can't make it work. When the fire...
And I remember holding my microphone in my hand because I don't think I had a mic stand, or I didn't have time to set up a mic stand, so I just recorded it. So this is what you're hearing. This is what I recorded that morning when I woke up. So it's really fresh and inspired. You know, and now I would have done this differently, of course, but that's the case with all music you make and you listen to it years later. Bass is just a bass sample. Boom, it's a great tone. I played that on my MIDI keyboard. And there were some MIDI drums, which I programmed, which I'm not even sure if they worked right now. It's just a snare here. Let's see. No, it's just a snare. But I programmed these MIDI drums because, of course, I didn't have a drum kit in my Amsterdam apartment. But then I hired Thomas Ebner. He is a drummer from northern Italy, close to Austria, I think. He lives there somewhere, and he's a session drummer. He does online stuff. He's amazing. You should check him out if you are looking for real drums. He's a great session player. And I just sent the track to him, and I was very specific about the drum part, because keep in mind, I am a drummer, so I'm really detailed on the drum parts. I prefer to play stuff myself, but I also learned to let other people do his or her thing. But I explained him how the drum part would sound like, and this is what he came up with. Let's go to the second verse. There's the 50 Ways groove.
That brings back life and breathes into my soul. I can almost taste it. I am waiting.
You know, and structurally, it's really a straightforward structure. It's the intro, first verse. There's a second verse. Then there's the chorus, a third verse. So that's basically like half of the first and second verse. So that speeds things up. I talked about that in the previous episode of this podcast. Then there's the chorus again. And then we go into the solo part, which I would really love to talk about.
I'm gonna be.
Because harmonically, there's something interesting happening there. We're in the key of G major. This there I'm gonna be. So we're C, da da D, da 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 da, and then we head into the solo section on an F major. C with an E, G, F, C over E, G major, F, C over E, and then something interesting happens. We go to E flat major, and then B flat over D, A major over C sharp, which brings us back to D suspended 4 to D. I'm going back to California. So we were going from G major, basically modulating sort of a whole step down, but then going to E flat, B flat with a D, and then A major with a C sharp. So the solo line really is interesting. I think that's a really interesting line, which occurred over that chord structure. Oh, here we go. There. I'm still really proud of that solo line because it's so melodic. There's so much emotion involved in that. And yeah, so that's very interesting. So the chord structure. My guitar is out of tune, apologies. The chord structure itself is really simple, but in that solo section, we really go into the different level, but it brings it back by going back to the notes A over C sharp, which is connected to the D. And I'm really enjoying stuff like that. Okay. So that's basically the entire song. Now let me see real quick if there are any special things. You know, if you have any questions about this song, feel free to leave a comment or leave a review and ask a question in that review. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or can you leave a review on Spotify? I don't think so. But leave a review somewhere, ask a question, and I will try to answer it. So that's going back to California. I haven't been back since, but I have been back in through the power of music. So I hope to be back sometime to do a long road trip through California, to experience the wonders of nature, to surf in the Pacific Ocean again. I did a surf lesson when I was there, and man, I loved it. Since then, I've done a lot of surf lessons, or a few, especially here in Portugal. I still cannot surf, but I really enjoy being out in the ocean, so looking forward to going back. Yeah, let me know what you think of this song, and stream it if you will. And if you enjoy my music, if you enjoy this podcast, if you think what I do is great, feel free to support me on my Patreon page. I have a Dutch equivalent of Patreon, which I'll leave a link down below in the show notes, where you can become my patron, where you can support me and the show and my music with a amount of your choosing. And that way you help me create more music. You help me to spend more time and resources creating music, which I think is my life's mission. I love doing this. The songs are all I have, man. And I still have a lot of podcasts to make because I have so much music that I would love to talk about and share more stories about. But long story short, feel free to support me on Patreon. Thank you very much in advance. You also get a lot of benefits, by the way. You get access to the vault, which contains unreleased tracks and demos. You get access to new music before it's released. And there's also an option for you so that I can write a custom song for you, which is really special. So go check that out. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a thumbs up, stuff like that. And I'll see you in the next one. Their third episode is also available now, so go check that out. We're going to talk about a rock song of mine called Surrender. So totally different stuff. We've done a pop song in episode 1. Now this sort of soft pop track. And now we're going to talk about a rock song that's I released recently. So go check it out. Thank you so much for watching, for your support. I really appreciate it. I love you all. Thank you, and I'll see you soon. Bye.